Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances or wishes to confirm the Church of Prabhupada. Maharaj, can you hear me? Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Our graces confirm the Church of Prabhupada.
Okay, now only 2 devotees there so far?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, you're right, Maharaj.
How many? Huh?
We're not many on the Bhakti, but 9 of us. Most of them have not come.
Well, we'll have to check about what's the better timing, but
I think everyone was informed about this time, and there was no any objection to the time.
okay, anyway, you're recording, right?
Yeah, we're recording.
Hmm?
Yes, we're recording, Maharaj.
It doesn't say you're recording up there, it just says on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm recording on YouTube. I'm live on YouTube.
Yeah, I know. So that you don't record it any other way?
Yeah, I just.
That's okay. That'll be there permanently, I guess. Okay, let me have a look at the lesson plan. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chaksu Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayaham Dadati Swaha Vedantikam Andeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sadujatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Sabhadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Namo Mahavranaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gora Trishe Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Okay, now it looks to me like we're supposed to do one chapter each week or something. Right?
That depends on how fast you could take it, Maharaj. All dependent on yourself.
It says 5 lessons and there's 5 chapters.
Yeah.
And then it's supposed to be page 53 of the student handbook.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so welcome whoever is attending. It's increasing. Nice to see you, Kamalaksha, still around. Very good. Madhavan. Your voice, nobody has good lighting, so I can see.
Okay, I will do that.
Chaitanya Prema has a light, so you can see his face. Everyone else has a light behind him. Okay. Okay. Student handbook. Okay, so we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Naranam Namaskricha Nanam Chaivananotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nitcham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purana Brahma Samitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishayasaya Lokasya Danyam Swastaya Namaha.
And present to
Nishayasaya Lokasya Danyam Swastaya Namaha. So anyway, this Bhagavatam is completely transcendental. It is the Mahapurana, the Bhagavat Purana, and it is the authorized commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And actually, the Bhagavatam is first in real long time history. But as far as we know, the Vedanta Sutra was present, and then the Vaishnavas didn't comment on it because they accepted the Bhagavatam as the perfect commentary. I'm trying to open that handbook, but it's not opening.
Okay, Maharaj, I can put it on the screen, Maharaj.
Yeah, it's not. At least the first one. That's the new handbook, and then the second one is Bhakti Vaibhava 2 Srimad Bhagavatam, August 2017. There's many different ones there. Are they all the same? No, they're different. Okay, let me try this one. BV1. It seems to be working. Download completed. Open. Okay. So what is this, unit 5 we're on? Yeah. Okay, lesson 1. Now, any of these members here, have you read these chapters? This is chapter 14 of the first canto.
Yes, Maharaj.
Who's read it?
I've gone through it, Maharaj, but we want to understand it.
Okay, so, all right, so it's the disappearance of Lord Krishna, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, we'll just kind of zip through it then. So Arjuna went to Dwarka to see Krishna and other friends and try to find out what the Lord is doing. So starts with text 2. And this is a very emotional and intense chapter, but it shows us what it really means to be a devotee of Krishna, be in love with Krishna. Because that's what our goal is to be in love with Krishna. Not just to want something from Krishna. Love means we only want to give to Krishna. So Arjuna was gone for a few months. And then Yudhishthira started to notice inauspicious omens, and they were very fearful. The purport is just explaining how powerful Krishna is, how he's created all the universes. And so while Krishna was present, then everything was nice. Of course, Krishna came, when Krishna did come, there were all these demons and they were making a lot of disturbance. But by Krishna's presence, everything changed. But Maharaj, being, there's like nowadays, I guess you call superstitions, but there are signs, inauspicious and auspicious signs, which many are mentioned in the Bhagavatam and in different places. Mahabharata, like we heard Kamsa couldn't see his reflection in the mirror, he didn't have a shadow, and all kinds of things. As Krishna, when he knew Krishna was coming. So Yudhishthira is wondering, Krishna must have left because otherwise all these things couldn't happen. Now here are some of the signs. Now this is quite, something to take note of actually, but the direction of eternal time had changed. This was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. Now that's been going on in the last, not so many years, but 20 or 30 years. In many places of the world, the seasonal irregularities are really off. They get like, of course you don't have winter there, but winter comes, summer starts, spring comes really early, then all of a sudden it gets really cold again. The rainy season won't come. Like one time I was going to Vrindavan and the train stopped in Mathura, and the devotees came on the train to get me, and they took me off the backside of the train, and we were walking across all the railroad tracks. And I said, what's going on? Because normally we go through the station. They said it was flooded. In front of the station was flooded, and then, it was like up to the waist or something. So it couldn't go there. And so the normal rainy season didn't happen for 3 months or something. It didn't rain. And all of a sudden for 2 or 3 days, the whole rainy season came and flooded everything, destroyed all the crops. These things are going on all the time. So something's, it means that Prabhupada says it means we're not preaching enough. People become greedy, angry, and deceitful. Okay, that's not uncommon, I think, at least according to the Nigerian newspaper. And they were adopting foul means of livelihood, which is definitely going on now. So this is the beginning of Kali Yuga. When Krishna was present, the Kali Yuga couldn't start, but when Krishna left, then the Kali Yuga could start. Fraudulence, corruption, right? Fraud. I heard in Ghana they had a fraud. They have a whole division of the government for fraud. They were trying to kick out some of these Nigerian pastors for fraud, taking so much money and sending it out of the country. So everything is there in the purport, what I just said. So during the reign of Yudhishthira, of course, everything was good. Somehow or other, and Parikshit also, when he took over, it became good again. He held back Kali for some time. That's why Kali was complaining that he couldn't find any place. And Parikshit told him, you can stay wherever there's, gambling and illicit sex, animal slaughter, but there wasn't any fight. So there's prescribed duties for everyone. And this is something that is a whole nother discussion, this Varnashram and Brahman, Kshatriya, Sudra. Nowadays, Prabhupada everyone is a Sudra. He said it so strongly that they're all Sudras. It doesn't matter what their birth is, but they have to be they have to be purified by Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise, everyone is a Sudra. So to move through this all in 2 hours is going to take a while. All ordinary transactions and dealings become polluted with cheating, even between friends. I don't think we need to really prove that. People will cheat, even, like they said, even when they don't have to. They had one president of the United States, it's Johnson, after Kennedy, and he was a cattle rancher, raising beef cows. And when he would have a party, he would take a whole cow and they put it on a stick and they cook it over the fire, spinning it around. You see that with chickens and stuff. And everybody would think, wow, this is really good. So, and other politicians, in politics, everybody lies. It's just like they consider that's necessary. To get elected, they have to promise all kinds of things that they know they can't do or they have no intention of doing. So they have all kinds of people trying to analyze what the voters want, and then they tell them that's what we're going to give you. But then they don't give it. But this Johnson president, other politicians said he lies even when he doesn't have to. Like they consider there are times when you have to lie. That's diplomacy. For you, I make no profit. But they said he lies even when he doesn't have to. So we find that even within the devotee community happens sometimes because of our previous conditioning. So we have to be very careful to root all that out. In family affairs, there's always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, well-wishers, and between brothers. These things are going on. Sons are cheating their fathers out of their property. I don't know, and I've heard in India and America, I've heard many times in Japan, many times the wife and the son get together and cheat the father out of all his property and kick him out after he's worked his whole life and never had any sense gratification, just giving them everything. And then between husband and wife, now that there's always strain and quarrel, so divorce rates are just going up and up and up, even amongst devotees. But it's getting better amongst devotees. I heard it's getting better amongst people, but in Europe and America, so many people, they don't even get married because they just expect that they're going to break up. So rather than have all the trouble of a divorce, they just don't get married. They just live together and they have some children, and then they can fight and separate, but they don't have the legal problems of divorce and all that. So it's all Kali Yuga. These things were happening even then 5,000 years ago. Yudhishthira was. So note this down in the purport of this verse 4. The conditioned living entity is endowed with 4 principles of malpractice: errors, insanity, inability, and cheating. usually it's said in different ways, tendency to make mistakes, being illusioned, imperfect senses, and cheating. So the cheating is that they make decisions and so-called knowledge and authority based on their imperfect senses, and then they present it as absolute truth. And it says that cheating propensity is the most prominent. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me once that if the Nigerians would use the intelligence that they use for cheating, for preaching, they could take over the world. They're very, very famous. But it's not only them, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's Kali Yuga. So these purports are very powerful. Prabhupada, he didn't hold back. When he was punching, he really punched. And so there's all these difficulties and between countries, and sometimes gets a lot of, at the moment, at least in the Western news, there's big publicity about this war, so-called war in the Ukraine. It's not exactly a war because they just attack, and the other side is not, like in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight because they were being threatened. They had taken away so the Ukrainians had to fight back to protect their property and their lives, but they weren't threatening the Russians at all. So nobody knows in Kali Yuga, where the quarrels start. What is it? There's no real reason for it. And then quarrels between people and famous news. I don't know if you see it in Africa. Some movie star got his Oscar award, and then a few minutes later he jumped up on the stage and slapped a comedian. So, and that gets more news than the war in the Ukraine. So people are just crazy. Mostly people, but if you try to talk to them, they say, I'm fine, no problem. But then they get home and they're beating up their wife, or they're, divorcing, so many things. So people became accustomed to greed, anger, and pride. So Yudhishthira, he asked his younger brother, this is Arjuna, he asked Bhima, I sent Arjuna to meet his friends and find out what Krishna is doing. Arjuna had lived in Dwarka for some time, and he was teaching martial arts there. So he had a lot of friends. But he had 7 months, he hasn't come back. So we don't know what's going on. They didn't have internet, they didn't have, television, they didn't have all this type of communication. Some great sages, they could know, by telepathy or something, but otherwise it was only when someone came and they had to travel. Well, Krishna could travel by horse and go 1,000 miles in one night, but most people had to walk. So not that often that messengers were coming. Up until not too long ago, that's the way it was everywhere. But now it's insanity because we have news of every place all the time. So his question is Krishna going to leave Earth? Is that, as Narada had somehow predicted that? Is it time? So Yudhishthira is really worried because the Pandavas, there was so much attached to Krishna. They were lovers of Krishna, and they knew that everything that they had was due to the mercy of Krishna, and they couldn't think of living. In fact, as soon as they knew Krishna left it, that comes up later. But so Krishna comes and he, delivered the faithful, annihilate the demons, and he had finished up that work. He killed off the last demons, Dantavaktra, and that was the last appearances of Jai and Vijay. He set the example, showing people how to live, following all the, the Vedic principles and everything. And in the purport here, Prabhupada is jumping ahead, but like Krishna showed the universal form on the battlefield, and then he made this pastime of apparently being killed by a hunter, shooting him in the foot, which is quite absurd when you think of all the weapons that Krishna dealt with that were thrown at him. Nothing could touch him. Brahmastra weapons, nothing. It just like water balloons or something, nothing. But he left behind a so-called material body in the material world, something that looked like, he left behind a body, and of course the wives did ceremonies, but so the atheist can say he's an ordinary person. At the same time, he was seen going off into the sky. That's in the 11th canto, 12th canto, and surrounded by all the demigods singing his praise and stuff. So Yudhishthira is panicking just to think that maybe Krishna left. He hasn't even got the news yet. So then he's just, and we should understand this is the real situation. It's only because of Krishna that they have kingly opulence, only because they have good wives, they have good children, they have control over their subjects, they beat the enemies, they can have a higher planets in the next life. Everything's possible only due to Krishna's causeless mercy. This is devotee. Demons always think, I did everything. I did the tapasya, I worked hard, or I cheated expertly. I invested more intelligently. I saved, I did everything better than I practiced more. And therefore, I'm on top of the heap. But devotees think it's all Krishna's mercy, that you could practice and you could know how to do things. And devotees don't cheat. Because law of karma is if I cheat you, somebody will cheat me, maybe not you, or in the next life you'll cheat me. If I treat you nice, then I'll get treated nice also. So he's pointing out that there's all these miseries, celestial influences. That means floods and tornadoes and winds and droughts, diseases, pandemics, or whatever you want to call it, bodily pains. They're all dangerous. And these things are starting to happen. They weren't happening before. Wherever Yudhishthira was, like Yudhishthira was so pious and so pure that when Duryodhana was looking for Yudhishthira, looking for the Pandavas when they were in exile, because if they could find him during that 1 year, then they have to be gone another 13 years. And they couldn't find him because Krishna was protecting them. So they were like invisible, you know. Even somebody could see them, they didn't recognize them. But the time was up, and then Bhishma, he laughed and he said, "You don't know how to find Yudhishthira." And Duryodhana had so many spies going all over the world, and they said, "What do you mean?" And Bhishma said, "Did you find any place where the crops were growing much better than everywhere else, and where the cows were giving the most milk, and where all the citizens were really happy?" And, you know, he started listing off where the weather was perfect. And they said, "Oh yeah, that was in this Matsya kingdom." He said, "That's where Yudhishthira is." He was always depending on Krishna. This Prabhupada, these purports are, you know, very, very powerful. Nothing man-made science can counteract the threefold miseries. They keep thinking they can, but birth, death, old age, disease, they can predict sometimes. The other day we were trying to do Harinam Sankirtan, and here we have these, you know, weather report. I had 3 of them on my phone, and they were all giving a different report constantly. One was saying it's already raining. One was saying it's going to start raining in 10 minutes. One was saying it's going to stop raining in 20 minutes. And actually it never rained. But, and they kept the weather, all the 3 weather reports kept changing every 5 minutes. So at best they can predict, but they're pretty good at telling you afterward exactly what happened, how much damage the storm did, how much flood, how deep was the flood, you know, how many people were killed, you know, how many crops were destroyed. They can give you a good, you know, report afterward, but they can't stop anything. They say they can, but so far they haven't. So the Asuras, they don't believe in God. This was a big thing I saw with this so-called pandemic or whatever it was. And the government was saying one thing, and many Christian preachers were very bold in saying, you know, you got to depend on God, and God gave us this immune system, and, you know, God is giving us everything, and why are we doing this and that? And they're rejecting all the, you know, these material plans. So now he is giving, and we might want to take note of these things. His left thigh, arm, and eye are quivering again and again. I'm having heart palpitations due to fear. This indicates undesirable happenings. And I think also it's if the right side is quivering, and that's auspicious. Nobody's ever had those symptoms. So again, Prabhupada repeats it. If the left eye, arm, and thigh are quivering constantly, one must know something is going to happen, which is undesirable, like a forest fire. No one goes in the forest to set fires, but fires come. Sometimes someone does purposely set a fire. I can't remember, some country, there were lots of forest fires, and they were being set purposely because the real estate developers, they wanted to build, you know, houses there, but the government was protecting the forest. But if it had burned down, then they could buy that land and build their buildings. So they say, in Indonesia, they burned down so many forests so they could plant palm oil trees to try to make money. They learned that palm oil art from Nigeria. And then they found out it was a terrible thing for the environment, and so many animals were left homeless and birds. But the forest fire can't be put out by human affairs. In America, every year they have so many forest fires, and it just gets worse and worse because of the animal killing and abortions. So the female jackals are howling at the sun. And the sun vomits fire, and the dogs are barking fearlessly at the king. Those are all bad omens. Take note of all these things. Useful animals like cows are passing me on the left side. And lower animals like asses are going circumambulating. And my horses are crying when they see me. Owls are shrieking and crows. There's this panicking, you know. And these are all these smoke circles the sky, the earth and mountains are throbbing. So it seems like there was a lot of, like volcanoes or earthquakes or something. Thunder and lightning without clouds. I've never seen that, but an interesting thing I heard in Sweden, I'll finish it. The wind is blowing violently, creating darkness. That's what we call a tornado in America. Clouds are raining with bloody disasters. When these huge winds, tornadoes, and hurricanes come, the path of where these tornadoes, these Trinavartas, there's nothing left. The trees, houses, everything is gone. It's sometimes pretty wide. And when it comes, it's total darkness and huge noise. It's just totally fearful for everyone. People just running like anything, driving so fast in their cars, or living way underground. So these things are still happening, especially in America all the time. Every summer, it gets worse. They get bigger storms and more of them every year. Says the rays of the sun are declining and the stars are fighting amongst themselves. And the people are really confused. Rivers and ponds and everything's disturbed. Butter won't light fire. I think far out. What's going to happen? What is going to happen? What is happening? Calves are not taking milk from the cows, and cows are not giving milk. They're crying. Bulls are not taking pleasure in the pasturing grounds. This is definitely going on now. Deities seem to be crying in the temple. Wow. And the gardens and hermitages are devoid of beauty, bereft of all happiness. I can't imagine what's happening, what kind of calamities are coming. So anyway, he's saying that this indicates that Krishna is not there. The earth was benefited. And the earth, when Krishna leaves, the earth is the most lamenting, because Krishna was walking on the earth, so she always had Krishna's association. Other people had sometimes, and sometimes Krishna, sometimes not. So while Yudhishthira was thinking like this, Arjuna came back. perfect timing. Huh? So let's slow down a minute. Anybody want to comment or have any questions about that section?
Can you please indicate by raising and using the emoji if you want to ask a question? I've muted everyone for control.
Everybody knows how to raise their hand. Under reaction.
Okay, Madam Prabhu, please kindly unmute and ask a question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Really appreciate your narration, how you simplified your subject matter. In the course of your discussion, you mentioned how stars are fighting among themselves. So I start wondering how that happens. Stars even fighting among themselves as part of the calamity.
Yeah. You know what I've told this many times, but I visited somehow, I was able to visit Bhakti Swami. I don't know, 6 weeks or 2 months before he left. And so when I was leaving to go back to Africa, I asked him if he had a message, you know, for the devotees in Africa. And he said 4 things, but the first thing he said, don't quarrel amongst yourselves. Because he had noticed that that was always going on. But it's not only in Africa. Every country I go, everybody thinks that they have exclusive problems that no one else has. But it's the modes of nature everywhere. They're not different from one country to the next. But some places it seems more prominent, but this quarreling is definitely a serious problem in the world. It turns into wars because of greed or just, you know, whatever, you know, some kind of, exactly. There was one mundane song, but it said, the president's got a war, but no one knows just what it's for. But if you have any question, they put you in the prison. If you don't agree. So they say people are leaving Russia because if they have ever expressed they don't agree with Putin, then they'll be put in the prison or killed. So it's a really crazy world. So anyone else? Huh? Chaitanya Prema scholar. You're in there twice. Hare Krishna Africa, then your name also. Where are these devotees? Madhavan, what country are you in?
Madam Prabhu is in Nigeria.
Where?
Ibadan. Nigeria.
Ibadan, okay. And Infinix Note 8.
That's Madam Prabhu from Ghana.
Can you change the name and put your name there instead of your telephone name? You just click on that little blue dot up on the right-hand corner of your, and then you can change the name.
I think it's Madam Prabhu.
Joy
Yes.
Group. Where are you? Huh? Where is Joyti Swarup? Are you muted or? Is he muted or you can't unmute or where is he? Chaitanya, you know?
Jyoti Sharu Prabhu, can you unmute?
Okay, I'm in Ghana.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandvat Pranam. Please accept my
Ghana.
obeisances.
Yeah,
Maharaj, I'm in Ghana right now.
and you're from India?
Yes, I'm from India.
Okay, good. And Chitraputra?
Chitraputra Prabhu, unmute yourself. He's from Ghana.
Good. Okay, so the Bhagavatam is such an amazing book. You know, I've been, when the pandemic started and everybody was locked down, the devotees from Israel, we started just reading. We read so many books, and then now we're reading the Bhagavatam. So mostly we just read it. And of course, we have to have the translation. But it's just amazing. You know, it's just so sublime. And we might not be able to, but such a good diet, a good medicine, exercise, you know. If you go and exercise one day, when you come home, you won't see any difference that you have all kinds of muscles or that you'll be in beautiful shape or something. But if we start doing regularly, so, but it says, you know, the Bhagavatam, by regular hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, all misconceptions are destroyed almost to nil. As long as we're in this material body, there's going to be problems, but they become almost, but it acts very powerfully medicinally to, you know, to cure everything. So we don't want to read it just, you know, to learn a few verses and try to defeat someone in an argument, show off, but just to relish, because we're actually here, we're associating with Yudhisthira. There's no difference. I was listening to my godbrother Rupanuga Prabhu, he's one of the first devotees. Somebody should unmute. The children are making noise. They should mute, I mean. I don't know who it is. So he was saying that Prabhupada hasn't gone anywhere. He's just got all the potencies in the books. And that's our, and he said that, and now we have Prabhupada's we have his audio also, because Prabhupada was very merciful to, from the very beginning, to record, you know, all his talks. Really incredible thing in those days, especially because nowadays everyone has a recording device in their phone or in their wrist, or, you know, but then it was a big machine, heavy machine with big reels of tape, and they jammed up quite often. And still Prabhupada was very careful to make sure that everything was recorded. So we have that opportunity. And so Rupanuga was saying, he said, it's not different than sitting in front of Prabhupada in the 26th Avenue. He said, I know because I've done both. You know, he actually was sitting there many days. In the early days, they didn't have any books even. For Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada told them they could read the Dr. Radhakrishna's Bhagavad Gita, but he said, don't read the purports because he's my buddy, but they could read the slokas and then Prabhupada would explain them properly. So we have all this in the facility. So if we just continue reading Srimad Bhagavatam, especially Chaitanya Charitamrita, then everything will be revealed because we're associating with Like in one place, Prabhupada says, Narada Muni has so kindly appeared on these pages. So we'll carry on. Now, this is a especially fascinating conversation. Arjuna is coming back and he doesn't want to give the bad news that Krishna has left. So he's, nowadays people like to be the carrier of bad news. We have many so-called devotees on the internet that are just relishing to say some bad news or some rumor, even not even really bad news, but just good news. They say, oh, no, I don't like to hear it. Yeah, that's okay. But devotees like the good news. We like to hear the Sankirtan reports. We like to hear the reports of festivals. We like to see, how many devotees are joining. We like that. So Arjuna came back from Dwarka. We're on text 23. So Arjuna bowed down, his older brother and the king, but Yudhishthira could see that he was dejected and tears are crying down from his eyes. And, it was quite obvious that Arjuna was not happy. So the king, he remembered that Narada Muni had predicted that Krishna is going to leave. But Yudhishthira didn't want to ask about that. He's going about it in a roundabout way. Hope against hope that there's some other reason that Arjuna is not happy. So first he just starts asking, and just like we do, if somebody comes from Nigeria to Ghana, or comes from Ghana to Nigeria or Togo, you want to ask them, how's this devotee, how's that devotee, what's happening? This is natural. So they're a society, they're people, they're families. So he's asking about all their friends and relatives, the Madhus, the Bojers, the Andakas, all the Yadu dynasty. Is everybody happy? He's concerned. And how's Surasena? Is he happy? That's the king. Surasena. He has other names. How's Vasudeva and his younger brothers? Is everybody all right? They were all in Dwarka. And how's Vasudeva's 7 wives? They're all sisters. Devaki is the queen, the chief, and are all their children happy? Sons and daughter-in-law, and that there's a lot of them, Krishna's family. And Ugrasena, who was the father of Kamsa, and his brother, are they still living? And just, all these names, but it's purifying to hear these names because they're all great devotees. Ridika and Kritavarma, Akrura, Jayanta, Gada, Sharana, Shatrajit. How is Balaram? And he knows he's God also. He's the personality of Godhead. How's all that? So he's asking also about Mathura because if Arjuna coming back, he must have stopped through Mathura on the way to Delhi. How is Pradyumna, the great general? That's the son of Krishna. Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, the grandson. They're all expansions of Krishna. Is he all right? And all the chiefs of sons of Krishna, Samba, Chardeshna, are they all right? So he doesn't want to ask the question, is Krishna all right? Is Krishna still there? But if he hears about that these other people are also not all right, then he can indirectly find out Krishna's gone. Because he's a king, knows how to diplomatically, have nice relationships. So you're just naming off all these devotees, Uddhava, Nanda, Sunanda. They're all protected by Balaram and Krishna. Is Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, text 34, who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses, and the brahmanas, and who's very affectionate toward his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwarkapuri, surrounded by his friends. So finally he asked about Krishna, and he describes him as Bhagavan, Govinda, Brahmanya, Bhaktavatsal. Swami Bhagavan, the original personality of Godhead, full of all opulence. No one is equal to his Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. And he's a protector of cows and the Brahminical culture. This is something that is totally forgotten in this day and age. Society without cow protection and Brahminical culture, that goes together. Brahminical culture is not just, dressing and wearing your dhoti in a certain way, or, having earrings on your, a sika. It's protecting cows and then also protecting everyone. But protecting the people means, educating them, waking them up. If someone is having a bad dream, if you wake them up, then the bad dream is over and their fear or whatever was happening in the dream is finished. Now the government is promoting animal slaughter in most countries. The Indian government is practically giving the farmers tractors, so they don't need the bulls. But then the farmers can't pay, they have to pay for the tractor, but the government doesn't give them enough money for their goods. So there's many suicide amongst the farmers. When they're living properly, if you go in some more remote villages or see the real life, and lots of cows, bulls are plowing the field. The cow dung is used for fuel and fertilizer, and life goes on very nicely. and everybody's happy. But beyond being a Brahmana is Vaishnava. Vaishnavas are called Dvija Shrestha. They're the best of the Brahmanas. Better than the Brahmanas, a Vaishnava. That's the next step. And if someone becomes a Vaishnava by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in this Kali Yuga, as predicted in the Bhagavatam also, that Yajna Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Hi Samedasa. The Yajna is the Sankirtan, and those who have good brain, they will join the Sankirtan movement. Okay, text 35 and 36. The original personality of Godhead, the supreme enjoyer, is staying in the ocean of the other dynasty with Balaram, the primeval Lord Ananta, for the welfare, protection, and general progress of the entire universe. And the members of the other dynasty, being protected by the arms of the Lord, are enjoying life, just like the residents of the spiritual sky. So Yudhishthira is, showing what a great devotee is and how much understanding he has of Krishna. He's not asking anything ever from Krishna. Even when he got, kicked out of his kingdom and treated so bad, he never asked Krishna, please give it back, why did this happen to me? He did ask at one point, why did this happen? And Krishna said, when I especially favor someone, I take away everything, which is not easy for materialistic people. And mostly we're praying to Krishna to give us something, give us sense gratification, give us, not dhanam, janam, sundaram, aisvarya, shuti, shubhir. So because of Krishna, everybody's living very nicely. So, of course, before Krishna left, all the other dynasty was destroyed. Yudhishthira didn't know about that. The news had not reached him. That was Krishna's way. Simply by administering comforts at the lotus feet of the Lord, which is the most important of all service. So that's why Prabhupada gave us deity worship. So we try to take care of the Lord very, very nicely. Beautiful decorations, and very nice food offerings, and kirtans, all for the pleasure of the Lord. Very important. We're reading in the third canto of the class here in New York, and Brahma's prayers. And then Krishna says, anyone who prays like Lord Brahma, all their wishes will be fulfilled. So sometimes the devotees will ask, new devotees, why I'm praying, but I'm not getting what I pray for. Could be you're not praying for the right thing, so Krishna doesn't want to give it to you, because that will distract you from service. But could be we're not praying in the right mentality also. That praying like Lord Brahma means praying only for the pleasure of the Lord. Praying to be able to serve in such a way that it gives great pleasure to the Lord. So we want to think like that. We're chanting for the pleasure of the Lord. We're going on Harinam. We're distributing books. We're offering food. We're taking prasadam. It's all for the pleasure of the Lord. The spiritual master is pleased. Krishna is pleased. Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasadam. 4 kinds of foodstuffs. And Krishna is very happy to see devotees taking prasadam or seeing anybody take prasadam. So that's why we like to distribute prasadam. And we make good relationships with people. The devotees in Ukraine, in spite of the bombs, and they're living in the subways with all kinds of people they never met before, and everybody has to suddenly get along with each other, and they're sleeping piled up on top, and very little facilities. But somehow people are bringing boga, and the devotees are cooking and providing, distributing prasadam even in the midst of all that. Devotees on the border where all the refugees, millions of 4 or 5 million people have left the Ukraine, flooding into countries that are on the border and even being transported to much further away countries, even to Canada, where they're giving shelter. And many of them are devotees, and they have to find temples, and temples have to really, they don't have that much room and facility, but it's being done. So the queens at Dwarka, headed by Satyabhama, induced the Lord to conquer the demigods. That's because they wanted some flowers from the heavenly planet. So the queens are enjoying things which normally is, only for wives of Indra. But of course, Krishna is the Lord of Indra, so no problem. Everything gets better. So I maybe you know the story how Satyabhama wanted a parijata flower. And Krishna had, but the demigods didn't want to give it to him. That's the nature of the demigods. It's a good story, but Krishna had just done something to get back. Some demon had stolen the earrings of Diti, the mother of the demigods. And then right after that, he's taken the parijata flower, and Indra attacked him and made a big fight trying to stop him. So husbands try to get their wife what they want. The wives of Krishna, they only wanted to serve Krishna. They were princesses already. They weren't trying to marry Krishna to get any kind of sense gratification. They just wanted to serve Krishna. So even though in their palaces they had many servants, they did, and even though there was no dirt, they would be cleaning and personally rendering service to Krishna. That's their only purpose in life. And that's supposed to be ours. So by hearing Bhagavatam and hearing about all these great devotees, like materialistic businessmen that are, advising others, they recommend reading biographies, people of successful businessmen, or if you're a sports star, read about the life of the great sports star and how they came up. And, so we recommend reading the biography of Srila Prabhupada. And we have biographies of other great acharyas, which are fascinating things. The story of Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhakti Vinod, Ramanujacharya was a few days ago, his appearance day. And hearing about them, first place we can know really what is a real devotee. And not maybe realize that we're not such great devotees. Sometimes we're just comparing ourselves to other devotees in our community, or devotees who have left, and thinking, well, I'm actually good. That's dangerous. But when we hear about all these great devotees, and we're not just hearing about them, we're actually associating with them. We're in one of these business advisor guys. He says, when you read a book, you're having a conversation with the author. So when we read Prabhupada's books, we're associating with Prabhupada. Sometimes devotees are thinking, oh, why wasn't I born at the time of Prabhupada? He might have been, and, gotten somewhere, but then it might even seem, but step by step. And we have in South Africa where Prabhupada visited, I just heard Kavicandra said they meet a lot of people that had met Prabhupada back when Prabhupada visited there. I know when I was in Bombay, these life members would come and they had met Prabhupada. I meet people even in New York and say, oh yeah, I met Prabhupada. I saw him at 22nd Avenue, and they never forget. People lived in the temple. I met one girl. She said, I was born in the temple in Chicago. And she gave the name of her father, who was still a very active devotee. And now she's, she may not be an ashram devotee, but they're very favorable. And so anyway, they met even one 2-year-old, well, not 2-year-old now, but had seen Prabhupada when he was 2 years old. And he actually remembered, the seeing Prabhupada was such an experience that even mostly you don't remember. They say you start remembering from 3 years old. Very few people remember things from 2 years old. But this baby that's seen Prabhupada remembered. But by reading the book, we're seeing Prabhupada, we're hearing from Prabhupada, we have all the movies, it's all on YouTube. So many records of Prabhupada's activities, very, very important. By these purports, you see how it opens up the verses and makes us understand so many things. So he's glorifying the yadus, and everything is because they're protected by Krishna. So they're fearless. And they have the Sudharma assembly house, which was taken away from the demigod by Krishna. Very long purports here. Forgetful conditioned soul is fearful, but a liberated soul is never fearful. Just as a small child completely dependent on the mercy of his father is never fearful of anyone. Fearfulness is an illusion for the living entity when he is asleep due to forgetting his eternal relationship with the Lord. Since the living being is never to die by his constitution, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2:20, then what is the cause of fearfulness? A person may be fearful of a tiger in a dream, but another man who is awake by his side doesn't see the tiger. The tiger is a myth for both of them, namely the one dreaming and the person awake. That's an example when Chandrasekhar Maharaj was pointing out the other day here. There's no tiger. But if you're dreaming of the tiger, or if you're dreaming you're falling off a cliff and, and you're panicking, it seems very real. So how can you help a person who's having a bad dream? So you want to help a person who's having a bad dream, you wake them up. Everyone is having a bad dream, daydream. We're in illusion. We're thinking I'm this body. We're thinking I'm this. This is my property. This is my family. So we have to wake them up. Jeev Jago, Goda Chanda Bole. Lord Chaitanya is calling, wake up. How long will you sleep in the lap of Maya? Wake up and understand you're not that body. Wake up and understand you're a servant of Krishna. So this is a devotee's duty. Wake, and just like if your neighbor's house is on fire and you know that they're sleeping, you'll try to wake them up. Get out of the house quick. And there's incidences true that somebody noted the house is on fire and they ran in and they're trying to wake the person up. No, leave me alone. I don't want to get up. I'm tired, because they're dreaming something. And there's so much in Tamagun that they can't even understand, that the house is on fire. Maybe they were intoxicated or something. But the body is our house and it's on fire. It's burning up and it can only last so long. So we need to get free from it, We don't have to leave the body physically. That will come about in due course of time. But we have to wake up. We have to understand we're not this body. That's a real thing. My brother Arjun, tell me whether your health is all right. You appear like you've lost your bodily luster. Have you been disrespected and others are neglecting you because of your long stay in Dwarka? It means, he was in Dwarka for a long time, so people just didn't treat him very nicely. So he's asking so many questions to avoid the real question. Arjuna doesn't want to say it, and Yudhishthira doesn't want to hear it, even though he knows already Krishna is gone. So these are all things we experience, and if Krishna is telling us in Bhagavad Gita to be equal in all these conditions, don't get attached, but they are things that affect us, and if we become really spiritual, higher consciousness, we can tolerate this. If someone talked to you in an unfriendly way, or you were not able to give charity when someone asked for it, someone wanted help and you couldn't give it, then we should feel bad. Another thing just to point out about charity, if we have the ability to help someone and we don't, then that's a sinful activity. It's getting very hard in New York. It's really hard. There's beggars everywhere, homeless people everywhere begging. Some of them, they really need help, and the only thing we can give them is the holy name. Some of them will give us donations, and they're begging, they're living in wheelchairs, and crippled, and still give a donation. They can do, we don't have to ask them, but they give it. So could you not keep your promise? That's another thing. If you make a promise and you can't keep it, you'll feel bad. That's a corruption. That's what the politicians do. They make so many promises. So we have to be careful. Don't promise. Don't make promises you can't keep, is the saying. So let's see what else. Then Prabhupada is saying in the purport what I just said, that the rich man is sometimes visited by people they need money and they're asking for donations. And the duty of someone who has wealth is to give charity. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are supposed to give charity. That's a duty. If a rich man doesn't help, then it's not good. And you should keep your promise to give in charity. If you don't, and so we may say, oh, I'm going to do this. Okay, sure. But, and then we don't do it. Even it's a service where it has to do. I've been going on book distribution and so many people say, oh, I'm just, when I come back, you're here, then I'm going to give you a donation. I don't have money right now. So many people say that. But very rare they come back. Once in a while they come back, but very rare. But they just say, they think, no, that way they can get away and say, I'm just in a hurry, but I'm just going to come back in 1 hour and I'm going to buy all your books. Probably they had no intention to that, but sometimes even if they did, Maya will bewilder them and they'll forget. So you are always a protector of brahmanas, children, cows, and women and old men. That's the duty of the Kshatriyas of any society, is to protect these types of people. Could you not give them protection when they ask you for shelter? And this is becoming an issue in ISKCON. Taking care of the children, we're getting more and more children as more people join, and taking care of the old people. Now there's many older devotees who need help. They can't do any service anymore. I know here one pujari came in, he's all worried that, he's getting old. He might not be able to carry on with his service. He's been doing it for 30 years and maybe he'll get kicked out of the temple. And, hopefully that won't happen. Mostly that nowadays the temples are very good and they try to help and protect, everybody. But we have women have to be protected. Sometimes their husband is not taking care of them. So if you've been defeated by an inferior person, that's also something that would cause depression, distress to a fighter. If he gets beat by someone who's considered equal or someone who's considered inferior, then he's going to be very unhappy. So in these purports are, we don't really have time to go over all the details, but, Prabhupada is giving a lot of understanding of proper culture. I don't know if we want to call it Vedic or whatever. Nowadays, a lot of devotees touting Vedic, but they don't really know what is Vedic. It's not just that, women are inferior, and brahmanas are superior, and everyone else has to bow down. But here it's talking about all the interactions and how things are being done. We can't take up really strict Vedic culture. If you read, like for Brahmanas, there's so many rules and regulations. It's to keep them in line. You have to be careful when you sleep, to be in a certain direction. You have to be a certain direction when you pass stool, when you take a bath, when you pass urine, when you eat, and make sure you're facing in the right direction. You know, you need a compass all the time. Try to remember all these things. But for devotees, those details are not so important. The important thing is that we're always trying to serve Krishna. That transcends all that. Just like the yogis try to leave their body at a particular time when the sun is in this side or that side. So like Bhishma, he was waiting for that time, but Krishna tells Arjuna, you don't have to worry about it. Devotees don't have to worry. The Prabhupada's giving a whole thing in this purport about marriages between Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriya man marries a lower caste woman or a higher caste woman. They have specific names for all that.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah, but
Yes, Maharaj, Salukedasi. This purport you're referring to, which of the text, Maharaj?
huh?
Which text? Which text of the purport you're describing now, Maharaj?
Yeah, 42.
42.
I'm going to go to 43. And it's showing how, you know, contact between men and women is restricted and, you know, not like nowadays. But Prabhupada had to adjust for that. When he came to America, he was criticized, you know, for letting ladies live in the temple. But there were many very deserving women wanting to be devotees. Some of them needed protection. They had children, their husband had left them. And he engaged, he didn't let them mix freely, and he made any couples come get married. Okay, 43. Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considered to be abominable? So we have to be careful. Sometimes the leader, the so-called leader, you know, he goes, he has a nice special prasadam and everything, but he's not taking care of everyone else. Then that's actually not a good idea. But take care of everybody who deserves it. So especially devotees, we would like to find all the sick and old people and, you know, all the abandoned women and help all of them. But at this point, the only thing we can do is spread the holy name in the books, and that will uplift more people to try to get to a higher consciousness. The problem is, as a culture, and some people still do something like this. Householders, before they eat, they will go out and shout 3 times, is anybody hungry? Does anybody need to eat? I know some people in Vrindavan, they won't eat until they feed a cow. They go out in the street and there's cows that come and they feed the cows of future bodies before they will eat themselves. And sometimes the householder, many people will come and he'll end up fasting because he feeds all the people he invites. Nowadays, not so much, but now the devotees are doing food for life and finding so many, worthy people in every part of the world. It's good to see it going on in West Africa. Because people are getting, we think they're getting prasadam. So they're all getting purified. It's not, we're feeding them, their bodies are getting, so they can appreciate that. They may not appreciate the spiritual side, but they're still getting the benefit. Finally, he asked the question here, text 44. Or is it that you are feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh, my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for your becoming so dejected. So ultimately, that's the real question. All these other things, he didn't really believe that would be, that Arjuna would be so distressed. Arjuna is a devotee also. He's a great yogi. He's beyond, getting too much upset. But his love for Krishna, that Krishna is gone, that's so finally he asked this question. Okay, did Krishna leave? No, it's just what happened. That's the next chapter. Rasavan, all right, welcome.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
It's supposed to cover some verses of chapter 15 also now, but that's going to be a rush, and that's a lot of verses.
Maharaj, please, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, Maharaj, reading all the vices that Maharaj Yudhishthira is describing, which are all symptoms of Kali Yuga. And then looking at our devotional communities where we are supposed to exemplify the opposite of these vices. When we see all this going on, what should be the mood of a devotee in such a situation? What should a devotee do when this vices seems to be manifesting within even the devotee community? What should be the devotee's approach?
Well, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So we have to, first place, understand, don't blame any particular people. It's Kali Yuga is the real enemy. And have we, done these things are telling us what we should be doing. Prabhupada, I just heard a lecture recently where he said, this is because we haven't preached enough. The devotee should think the world is going on. And if we see it within our community, because we're preaching, right? And we're inviting anyone and everyone. So the people that are coming into our community, they're not always pure. But we want to make sure that we have an atmosphere where they can come purified. So management is a very difficult thing, but if we increase the preaching, we have more kirtan, we have more of this, reading Bhagavatam, so we understand and we get purified by these activities. And people that are doing these unpleasant things, they'll also get purified by the Bhagavatam. So we have to, it's Kali Yuga. We tend to sometimes blame, many devotees blame the GBC for all their problems. They blame the temple president, they blame their mother, they blame their father, they blame government, but we're all victims of our own karma, right? And we're all here, so we have to get out from the Kali Yuga. Kali can only be, Kali is driven out by kirtan. And the more we have kirtan, people that are troublemakers, that are too much attached to being servants of Kali, they won't stay around if the atmosphere is very pure. Okay, does that help?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much. It does help. Thank
Well,
you.
so they're really trying to, for a 2-hour class, to push through all these next 20 slokas is a big job, you know, because I didn't make that much commentary and just reading, but anyway, we'll do that next time. The next is, you know, Arjuna's answer and how Arjuna is feeling. And again, very important to understand it. Because we've all experienced people being so distressed because they lost their I met one girl came up the other day and she gave a donation, and she's an Indian girl and not so old. And she looked really, really sad. And then she came up to me and she said, I lost my little brother. I lost my little brother. Please pray for him. Please. You know, she was just crying. So these emotions are there and they're real. We can't say, no, he's not that body and you're not that body. I say, we'll pray for you. We're all praying. The kirtan was going on. I said, we're praying right now. We're all praying for it. Because it's true. Prabhupada said, I'm praying for everybody. So Arjuna has, and Yudhishthira, they have these same feelings for Krishna. But then it's much, much more intense. So they've been separated from Krishna before when he left for Dwarka, but now, you know, he's completely left, so very serious. Okay, now you have to excuse me. Today is Saturday. I have a temple class. I'm going to have to try to change that schedule. But so it's supposed to be in 7 minutes. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Maharaj.
We just get started. You know, the Bhagavatam is so unlimited. Prabhupada said we could discuss one verse for 3 days or something, you know. One time he said, so to read the whole Bhagavatam is going to take you 1,500 years or something. He gave different calculations like that to really dig in.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you for your time.
So we'll meet tomorrow, and tomorrow, please, everybody try to come on time. And we'll get started right away.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we request all of the devotees to please kindly unmute and chant loudly Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate Maharaj for his kindness and mercy on us. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Some come and go, come along. I think some of you, sometimes you don't have good internet connection, so that's why people don't come. You know, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation in Africa.
The whole of Africa.
Gauranga.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.